Fanfic Corner, presented by Jennifer. Jacen's Jedi Adventure, a Star Wars Rebel fanfic. Written and read by Jennifer. When Sabine and Ahsoka returned from their quest, Jacen was introduced to someone he had only heard stories about, his big brother Ezra. While his mom called Ezra his brother, Jacen didn't see how they were related. Ezra was human, while Jacen was half Twi'lek. But despite that, Jacen liked Ezra. He had survived on his own twice. He loved spending time with his big brother and hearing stories about his life. Stories his mother and Sabine didn't know. Ezra, Jacen said as he ran into the training room. Ezra turned and smiled at his little brother. Jacen, he said, does Mom know you're here? She does, Hera said, entering the room. She's just not as fast as an excited 10-year-old. Ezra had thought of Hera as his mom not long after joining the Ghost Crew, and started referring to her as his mom after his 15th birthday. But it wasn't until Sabine found him and brought him home that he started calling her Mom. What can I do for you? Ezra asked. I need a favor, Hera said. Can you watch Jacen today? I don't know if that's possible. I'm taking a group of younglings to Lothal to do some training and connecting to animals. I already talked to Luke. He said you could take Jacen with you. Ezra smiled, shook his head, smiling. Hera must have been desperate for a babysitter if she had okayed Jacen tagging along on Ezra's training class with Luke. He also knew that there were only so many people Hera trusted to watch Jacen. Zeb and Callus were on Larasan. All of Ahsoka's free time was being spent planning her wedding to Senator Bonteri. Jacen didn't know Luke, Leia, Han, or Chewie all that well, and Sabine was on bed rest until the baby was born. That left Ezra. Okay, Mom. Jacen can come with my class to Lothal, Ezra said. I can't wait to see Lothal, Jacen said. I want to see where you lived and the pictures Sabine painted. Sorry to disappoint you, but we won't be near there. I'm taking the younglings to an area surrounding the Jedi Temple. Why there? I have my reasons. Hera smiled. She had a pretty good idea why Ezra chose the Jedi Temple on Lothal. Ezra had a lot of good memories of Kanan at the temple. Kanan had taken him there not long after Ezra had joined the crew, and it was there that Ezra found his Kyber crystal. They also had friends that lived at the temple, a pack of Loth wolves. The trip to Lothal was uneventful. Jacen got to ride co-pilot, though Ezra wouldn't let him touch the controls. Not that he could if he wanted to. And he stayed in his seat while his brother instructed his students on what the lesson would be. Keep in mind that the Empire once controlled Lothal. Ezra told his students, "My wife and the other resistance fighters managed to get rid of the leftover weapons that they could find. But keep your eyes open and be careful." The students nodded. Then the ship touched down, and when the ship touched down, they filed out and waited for instructions. Jacen stood next to his brother. "We've been talking a lot about using the Force to connect with other living beings," Ezra said as he walked up and down the line of his students, Jacen on his heels. "Your assignment is to use the Force to connect to a member of the local wildlife. Once you do, convince it to come back to the ship with you." "Are we going to be bringing them back to the temple with us?" asked a blue-skinned Taruga with silver eyes and white and purple montrals and laku. "No, they'll remain here. There's lots out there. Birds, lothcats, and a few lothwolves." Ezra smiled. "First one to connect and come back with a lothwolf gets to be co-pilot on the flight home." With that, he sent his students off, reminding them to keep the ship in sight. "Can we see the mural Sabine painted?" Jacen asked. "Sorry, buddy, but that's in the same area as my tower." "Can I go play then?" "Just stay where I can see you." As Jacen went to play, a lothcat rubbed against Ezra's leg. "Can you keep an eye on him?" The lothcat gave a meow before following Jacen. Many of the animals on Lothal were Ezra's friends. Even before he met Kanan, Ezra was drawing animals to him. He just had no idea why. Meeting Kanan and learning about the Force had opened Ezra's eyes to a lot of things about himself. Jacen explored the area, looking back occasionally to make sure he could still see the ship. It was all so beautiful, and he couldn't understand why his mom never wanted to come here. Though he knew that she had spent time on the planet, his mom never wanted to talk about it. Looking back, he could not only see the ship, but also his brother. Unlike most kids, Jacen knew he had to stay close. He also knew that even the most innocent-looking of places could be dangerous. Spending the first 4 years of his life at one base or another had taught him that. Jacen waved to make sure Ezra could see him, and waited until he saw him wave back. He knew that because he had students there, Ezra couldn't just go off and play with him. He had to stay where his students could find him. When his big brother waved back, he went back to exploring. He knew this was a Jedi temple, but it looked so different from the one back home. In fact, if Ezra hadn't said it was a temple, Jacen would have thought it was just another one of the rock outcroppings. He really wanted to go inside and explore, but he knew that he couldn't without Ezra. After exploring what he could while staying in Ezra's sight, Jacen went back to the ship. His brother's students would be back, and he wanted to see what animals they connected with. "Very good," Jacen heard Ezra say as he approached the ship. 2 of Ezra's students had returned, each with a lothcat. Ezra had said that lothcats were extremely common on the planet of Lothal, and extremely friendly. So he expected most of his students to come back with one. Both lothcats were small and brown with button black eyes. But Jacen knew from the stories that Ezra had told him, that there was at least one white one with blue eyes. Though Ezra did say he last saw it 10 years ago. "We wanted wolves, but we couldn't find one," said the girl, a pretty green Twi'lek that reminded Ezra of a teenage Terra. "Well, despite how big they are, lothwolves can be difficult to find. Before the Battle of Lothal, no one had seen one in over a century. In fact, up to that point, they were thought to be extinct." There was a crackle on the comlink. "Master Bridger," came a voice. "I need some help." "Send your coordinates and I'll be right there." Ezra looked at his two students. "I hate to ask, but could you two keep an eye on Jacen until I get back?" "We don't mind," said the other student, a human Nautilin hybrid. As Ezra left to help his student, the Twi'lek looked at Jacen and her fellow student. "How about a game of hide-and-seek?" she said. Everyone at the temple knew how much Jacen loved to play hide-and-seek. Back at the temple, it was his favorite game to play while visiting his brother and sister. In fact, Jacen loved to play it so much that the younglings liked to use it for sensory training. Luke didn't discourage it. He was trying to move away from the old style of training and let his students have fun. While the Twi'lek girl began to count, Jacen and the other Jedi went looking for places to hide. Jacen looked around for a good place to hide. He had to find one since he didn't want to be the first one found, or even found at all. He liked being able to outsmart others when it came to hiding. Hiding was something he learned to do at a young age. When you spend the first 5 years of your life on one rebel base or another, you had to learn to hide really well in case the Empire ever found them and attacked. In fact, Jacen had learned to hide before he learned to walk. Hide-and-seek was also his favorite game to play with his big brother. He looked around. There had to be some place he could hide. A cave caught his eye. If he didn't go too far into it, it would be perfect. The cave didn't look very deep anyway. With any luck, no one would look for him there. But there was more to this cave than he thought. "Such a little pup. I wonder what he's doing here." "He's playing. I can smell the other two nearby." "Be still, both of you. Do you want to be seen?" Jacen looked back. He thought he heard something, but couldn't see anything. Maybe he had just imagined it. His Uncle Zeb always said he had a great imagination. But the voices had sounded so real. He moved further into the cave to find out what he had heard. What he didn't know was that he was going into the Jedi temple. "He's going into the temple. That's not possible. Only a Jedi can enter." "You forget who his father is. He has a connection to this place that he doesn't know of." "We must watch him, make sure he's safe, and returns to his family unharmed." "I will keep an eye on him and make sure nothing happens to him." "Are you sure? You know that." "I am, and I want to. You know why." Jacen had heard about the temple from Ezra. His big brother had been there 3 times during the war. The first time, he had received his Kyber crystal. The second time, their dad had been knighted. The third time, Ezra didn't like to talk about. His Aunt Ahsoka said that something happened there, but it wasn't her place to tell. Jacen knew better than to ask questions when his aunts said that. She knew things about his parents and siblings, but had promised Hera, Sabine, and Ezra that she would let them tell Jacen in their own time. Jacen looked around. It looked like no one had been in the temple since the last time Ezra had. The inside didn't look anything like the temple back home either. It was dark and dusty, and a little scary. Jacen wanted to get out and get back to his brother, but he had one small problem. He didn't know how to get out. "Ezra, please find me," he said, not exactly sure how Jedi sense things through the Force. Nothing. Jacen wasn't even sure if Ezra could hear him through the Force. "Dad, Mom always says you're watching over me. If you are, I could use some help. I need to get back to Ezra, but I don't know the way out." A noise came from behind him, and Jacen turned to see a Lothwolf standing there. Even though the Lothwolf towered over even his Uncle Zeb, Jacen wasn't scared. He heard enough stories from his mom, Ezra, and Sabine to know that Lothwolves weren't dangerous. "Did my dad send you?" Jacen asked. In response, the Lothwolf laid down, allowing Jacen on its back. It then carried him out of the temple and back to the ship. The other students had come back, and there were a variety of animals, but not one other Lothwolf. "So, does this mean I get to be co-pilot going home?" Jacen asked, looking at his brother over the Lothwolf's head. The ghost landed in the field near the temple. It had been a few months since he'd been there, and Jacen wanted to see if his friend was still in the area. "I don't see him, Mom," Jacen said after leaving the ship. "Well, give him some time," Hera said. "If he's still in the area, he'll come." "It's nice to be back," Sabine said, holding her and Ezra's newborn son, Kanan. "I haven't been back to Lothal since after the wedding." Another ship flew overhead, landing not too far away. "What kind of ship is that?" Ezra asked. "A modified Omicron attack shuttle," Hera said. "It belongs to a friend of mine." The hatch to the ship opened, and 5 children, a Taruga, a Trandoshan, a Twi'lek, a Rodian, and a Nautolan, ran out, followed by a Lothal hound and a human woman. "Boys, don't go too far," the woman said. "Stay where I can see you." "Okay, Mom," the Taruga said. "And Crosshair," the woman said. "Listen to Hunter." "But Mom," the Rodian started to say. "No buts, young man. Listen to your brother, or you can spend the rest of this trip on the Marauder." "Hi, co-pilot," Hera said, using her old nickname for her friend. "It's been a long time." "I know," she said as she and Hera hugged. "You were talking with your accent last time we spoke." "How are you? I know you've been through a lot with the loss of your brothers and taking on 5 children. Fee helps me when she can, and I could ask you the same question. You lost the man you loved and are raising your son alone." "I have help too," Hera said, looking at Sabine and Ezra. "Mom," the Trandoshan said as the boys ran up to them. "This place is really cool. Can we go exploring?" the Nautolan asked. "Wait a moment, boys," Hera's friend said. All 5 boys looked at her. "Didn't you forget something?" she said, nodding to Hera and the others. "Hi, Jacen. Hi, Aunt Hera," all 5 boys said in unison. "How cute," Ezra said. "Aunt Hera." The boys looked at him and Sabine. Hera smiled. "This is Ezra and Sabine Bridger Wren and their new son, Kanan," she said to the boys and their mom. "And this," she said to Ezra and Sabine, "is my old friend Omega Fett and her sons, Hunter, Echo, Wrecker, Tech, and Crosshair." Little Carhound barked, and Badger, of course. Hera had mentioned Omega before, but Sabine and Ezra had no idea she had kids. "It's nice to meet you," Sabine finally said. "We heard a lot about you." "You're Aunt Hera's other kids, right?" Echo said. "Kind of," Ezra said. "She and Kanan took us in when we were teenagers." Omega's boys looked at her, then back at them. "Would it be okay if we called you Aunt Sabine and Uncle Ezra?" Hunter asked. "If you want to, it's okay." A noise drew Jacen's attention. "Mom," he said, tugging on Hera's sleeve. She and the others looked where he was pointing, and there stood a Lothwolf, one that Ezra and Hera knew well. "That's the one, Mom," Jacen said after the wolf approached them. "The Lothwolf that helped me get back to Ezra." "Good to see you again," Ezra said, patting the Lothwolf. With tears in her eyes, Hera approached the Lothwolf. "Thank you for watching over Jacen," she said, leaning her forehead against the wolf's. "I've missed you, Kanan." Okay, for any of you who have a fanfic or a short story you would like me to do a reading on, please feel free to send it to my Facebook page or my Facebook group. The links for those will be in the description section. And for those of you that want to read any of my fanfics or short stories, you can go to Wattpad or Archive of Our Own. I'll try and get the site for that last one. But the one for Wattpad will be in the description section as well. For those of you who want to send me a fanfic or a short story, keep a couple of things in mind for the when you do. First off, please be sure to include your name, and if you're submitting someone else's work, the name of the author. Second, please try to keep them short. If you're also doing something that's going to be chapters, please identify each chapter. I mean, if you want to send me one chapter and then send me another chapter when it's done, that's fine. That's how I do my stories. As soon as I'm done writing the chapter, I do a reading on it. And the other one, the next chapter might take a while before it's posted. That is perfectly fine if you want to do that with chapter stories. But keep in mind that with one-shots, if they're really long, I will break them up like I do with mine or any of the other one-shots I've done that are very long. Please keep them clean and appropriate. If it's a holiday fanfic or short story, please submit it 2 months before the holiday, and please be sure to include the name and the date of the holiday. And